I never meant for it to happen. But the second our eyes met that night, under the soft hum of the porch light, my brother laughing somewhere inside, I knew I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. Liam wasn't supposed to look back at me that way. He was supposed to be off-limits, a constant fixture in our house, my brother's best friend, the guy who'd been around since I was 12, who taught me how to drive, how to throw a perfect pass, how to keep a secret. He was the one who always called me kid, even when I wasn't one anymore. And yet that summer, something changed. Maybe it was the way his laughter had gotten quieter, or how he started staying late after my brother left. Maybe it was the way he watched me sometimes, like he was trying not to. The night it all started, the air smelled like rain and cut grass. The storm had passed, but the world still felt damp, electric. My brother, Ryan, had gone upstairs to take a call, leaving the two of us sitting in the living room, a low movie playing on mute. Liam leaned back against the couch, the flickering light painting his jaw in silver. "You ever feel like everyone expects you to be someone you're not?" he asked, voice low, like he wasn't really talking to me. "Yeah," I said, "every day." He turned to me then. For a heartbeat, neither of us said anything. There was just that look. A look that said, "I see you," and I couldn't remember the last time anyone had. The next few days blurred into one long ache of almosts. He'd show up, same as always, slinging his duffel bag over one shoulder, joking with Ryan, his cologne trailing after him. But there were glances now, fleeting, careful, charged. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself he didn't mean anything by it. But then came that Friday. Ryan had gone to a party out of town, leaving the house empty. I was outside shooting hoops just to kill time. The air was thick with heat, the sky painted in that deep indigo right before night fully falls. Liam showed up unannounced. "He's not here," I said when I opened the door. He just shrugged. Didn't come for him. That line, it shouldn't have meant what it did, but it felt like the world tilted just a little. We played basketball under the porch light until sweat ran down our backs and laughter came too easily. When I missed a shot, he grabbed the ball, smirking. "You've gotten better." I smirked back. Maybe I had a good teacher. He tossed me the ball again. "Maybe." His voice was soft now, almost teasing. The silence that followed was heavier than any words could have been. I could hear the cicadas, the hum of the streetlight, my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. And then he stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell the faint salt of his skin, the warmth of him. His eyes searched mine, a question hanging in the air. "Ethan," he said, and my name had never sounded like that before. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just leaned in, and he didn't pull away. It wasn't a kiss at first, not really. Just the press of foreheads, the whisper of what could be. But when our lips finally met, it was quiet and trembling and desperate all at once. And then, just as suddenly, he stepped back. "Your brother," he started, shaking his head. "Ryan can't." "I know," I said, cutting him off. My voice broke a little. "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting anywhere but me. "I can't do this to him. He trusts me." I nodded, because what else could I do? The air between us was still trembling, the echo of that moment still burning. When he left that night, the court felt emptier than it ever had before. Days passed, weeks maybe. Ryan didn't notice or pretended not to. Liam stopped coming around as much, and when he did, it was all polite smiles and safe distance. But you can't unfeel something like that. I'd see him sometimes, across the field during their weekend games, sunlight cutting across his face, that same look flickering just long enough to undo me all over again. I started writing again, something I hadn't done in years. Words were the only place I could put what I couldn't say. Poems that weren't really poems, letters that would never be sent. Then, one night in late August, I got a text from him. "Can we talk?" My heart stopped. When I got to the old park by the lake, he was already there. Sitting on the railing, the wind tugging at his shirt, eyes reflecting the water below. "I tried to forget it," he said before I could speak. "I thought if I ignored it, it'd go away." "Did it?" He shook his head slowly. "No, it just got louder." For a long moment, I didn't know what to say. The crickets, the wind, the lake. Everything felt too quiet, like the world was waiting. Finally, I said, "So what now?" He looked at me, and for once, there wasn't fear in his eyes, just honesty. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'm tired of pretending I don't want this." I took a step closer. "Then don't." When he kissed me again, it wasn't hesitant this time. It was real. The lake shimmered behind us, the moon caught in its ripples. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was someone's secret. I just felt seen. But love, especially this kind, doesn't stay easy for long. Ryan found out. Not from us, but from someone who'd seen us that night at the park. The fallout was instant, shouting, doors slamming, the sound of something breaking that couldn't be put back together. "He's my best friend," Ryan yelled, voice hoarse. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" And I wanted to tell him, yes, I do. I've fallen for someone who makes me feel alive. For someone who looks at me and doesn't see a shadow. But I didn't. I just stood there, silent, while Liam stared at the floor. Ryan left that night. Moved out a week later when college started early. The house felt bigger, emptier, quieter than it had ever been. Liam and I didn't speak for weeks after that. Maybe we were both scared of what it had cost us. But one afternoon, as autumn started to creep in, he showed up at my door again. No words, no apologies, just a look that said I'm still here. And somehow that was enough. Because love, real love, doesn't always need to shout to be heard. Sometimes it just waits quietly, like a heartbeat you didn't know was still there. He stood there on the porch, sunlight catching the edge of his hair, and for a second it felt like time folded in on itself. Like all those years of him walking through this door were still echoing quietly between us. I didn't move at first. Neither did he. We just stared, caught between everything we'd already lost and everything we still didn't know how to say. Finally, I managed, "You shouldn't be here." "Probably not," Liam said softly. But I couldn't stay away anymore. Something inside me cracked at that. His voice wasn't confident like it used to be. It was fragile, raw, like he'd been fighting himself for too long. I stepped aside without saying another word. He came in, shoulders tense, hands in his pockets. The house smelled like dust and rain. I hadn't bothered to open the windows in days. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd spent years talking about nothing, video games, school, the future, before it all became something we couldn't name. Now, even silence between us felt like it could shatter. "Ryan still won't talk to me," he said finally. I swallowed hard. "He won't talk to me either." He nodded like that hurt him just as much. "He'll come around. He always does." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I broke something that can't be fixed." "You didn't," Liam said immediately, his voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet, then softer. "We both did. But that doesn't mean it's over." I looked at him then, really looked, and saw the exhaustion behind his eyes, the guilt, the longing. The way his thumb was tracing small circles against the edge of the table like he needed something to hold on to. "Why did you come back?" I asked. He hesitated. "Because pretending I don't love you was killing me." The words hit like a punch. Not because I hadn't imagined them, but because I never thought I'd hear them out loud. He looked at me, waiting for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe rejection. I didn't know which he feared more. I stood up and walked around the table until I was right in front of him. My voice barely came out. "Say it again." He swallowed. "Ethan, say it." His gaze didn't waver. "I love you." And suddenly, it wasn't the same house anymore. It wasn't the same silence, the same ache. It was something new, fragile, yes, but real. I reached for him, my hand finding his, and it felt like something that had been waiting for years finally clicked into place. He pulled me in, slow at first, like he was afraid I'd disappear. And then we were kissing, not like before, not with guilt hanging over us, but with everything we'd held back finally spilling out. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was honest. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine, both of us breathing hard. "I don't care what anyone thinks anymore," he whispered. "Not Ryan, not anyone. I can't keep choosing what's easy over what's right." "Right?" I said with a shaky laugh. "You think this is right?" He smiled, small, tired, but real. "For the first time in my life, yeah." The days after that blurred together, quiet and tender in ways I didn't expect. We didn't tell anyone. We didn't need to. It was enough to exist in our own little corner of the world. Stolen hours, secret smiles, the kind of peace that comes when you finally stop running from yourself. Sometimes he'd come by late at night, headlights off, sneakers squeaking softly on the wooden floor. We'd sit on the roof, watching the town sleep beneath us, and he'd tell me about his plans. How he wanted to move out, start over somewhere new, away from all the noise. "You'd come with me, right?" he asked one night. The stars were faint, drowned out by city light. I could barely see his face, but I could hear the hope in his voice. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Anywhere." He smiled then, and I knew he believed me. For a while, it almost felt like a promise we could keep. Then one afternoon, Ryan showed up. No warning, no call, just the sound of his car door slamming shut. Heavy footsteps up the drive. My heart jumped straight into my throat. Liam froze. "Do you want me to go?" I shook my head. "No, I'm done hiding." Ryan didn't even knock. The door swung open, and the moment his eyes found us, standing too close in the kitchen, I saw it, that flicker of betrayal all over again. He stared at Liam first. "You really came back here?" Liam's voice was steady, even though I could see his hands trembling slightly. "Yeah, I did." Ryan laughed, sharp, bitter. "You've got some nerve." "Ryan," I started, but he cut me off. "No, you don't get to talk right now. You both went behind my back. You made me feel like an idiot in my own house." "It wasn't like that," Liam said quietly. "It never was about betraying you." "Then what was it about?" Liam's jaw tightened. "It was about him," he said, nodding toward me. "It's always been about him." Ryan looked at me, eyes burning. "Is that true?" I didn't look away. "Yes." For a second, he didn't move. Then he exhaled, long and low, like something inside him had finally snapped. "I don't get it," he said softly. "Out of everyone in the world, why him?" "Because he sees me," Liam said simply. "Not who I'm supposed to be, just me." Ryan looked between us, the silence stretching thin, like something breaking under its own weight. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. The sound of the door slamming was like thunder. That night, I found Liam sitting on the porch steps, head in his hands. "He'll never forgive me," he said. "Maybe not today," I said, "but one day." He shook his head. "He's my brother, and you're not just his best friend anymore." He looked up then, eyes glassy in the porch light. "That's the problem, isn't it?" I sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders touched. "No, that's the truth." We sat there until the crickets faded and the night air turned cold. Weeks passed again. Slowly, things began to shift. Ryan didn't come around much, but he texted once. Just a short message. "Take care of him." I showed it to Liam, and for the first time in months, he smiled without hesitation. That winter, we packed up our things and moved into a small apartment 2 towns over. It wasn't much, cracked walls, a leaky faucet, a view of the highway, but it was ours. We built a life out of small moments. Coffee on the balcony, quiet dinners, falling asleep with the sound of his heartbeat steady beside mine. Sometimes, when I'd catch him looking at me across the room, I'd still feel that ache. The one that started years ago on a basketball court under a single porch light. Only now it didn't hurt. Now it felt like coming home. Love doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase the past or make the world kinder. But it teaches you to stay, to fight for something real even when it scares you. And if I've learned anything, it's that the hardest part isn't falling in love. It's believing you deserve to be loved back. And somehow, against all odds, he made me believe it. The city wasn't big, but it felt like another world. No one here knew who we were, or what we'd been through. There were no sidelong glances, no whispers behind closed doors. Just the steady rhythm of a place where you could start over and no one asked questions. We got jobs. Liam worked mornings at a local gym, coaching kids who reminded him of who he used to be. Loud, fearless, full of dreams. I picked up shifts at a bookstore downtown, surrounded by paper and stories that smelled like escape. At night, we'd meet halfway home, walking under streetlights that buzzed and flickered, our hands brushing occasionally until one of us finally gave in and reached for the other. Some nights we'd talk about everything, our fears, the future, the past. Other nights we didn't say a word. Just existing together was enough. It wasn't perfect. We argued, sometimes fiercely, about money, about the things we couldn't change, about the weight of keeping something so fragile alive. But even when the shouting stopped and silence filled the room, we always found our way back. Because the truth was simple, we'd already lost too much to let go now. Spring came early that year. The first warm day, Liam dragged me outside, insisting we drive to the lake. The same lake where he'd once told me he couldn't stop pretending. The drive was quiet, the kind that felt full even without words. The air smelled like wet earth and blooming trees. When we reached the lake, he parked and just sat there for a minute, staring at the water. "Feels smaller," he said after a while. "Or maybe we just grew up," I said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe both." We walked down to the edge, our shoes sinking slightly in the damp grass. The wind picked up, catching his hair, and for a second I was back in that summer again. That first kiss, that rush of fear and wonder tangled together. "I used to come here after everything went to hell," he said quietly. "I'd sit on that same railing and just wonder if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life." I turned to him. "Coming back." He shook his head. "Leaving you." For a long moment I couldn't breathe. He reached into his jacket then and pulled something out, a folded photograph. It was old, slightly bent at the corners. Me, him, and Ryan years ago at some birthday party, all grins and sunshine. "I kept this," he said, "because I wanted to remember that not everything between us started in pain." I stared at the photo. Ryan's arm was around both of us. We looked so young, so certain that nothing could ever break what we had. "Do you think he'll ever forgive us?" I asked. Liam's eyes softened. "I think he already has. He just doesn't know how to say it yet." I smiled faintly. "You always believe the best in people." He looked at me, a small grin tugging at his mouth. "Only when it comes to you." And before I could answer, he leaned in and kissed me. Slow and sure, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for forgiveness because it already carried it inside. The lake shimmered, the world spinning quietly around us. And for once there was no fear, no guilt, only peace. A few months later, Ryan showed up. I just closed up the bookstore for the night when I saw him standing across the street, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning until they found me. My stomach dropped. It had been almost a year. "Hey," I said carefully when I reached him. "Hey," he replied. His voice was quieter than I remembered. We stood there for a moment, neither of us sure how to start. He finally said, "You look different." "So do you." He gave a small, tired laugh. "Yeah, well, life will do that to you." The silence stretched again, but it wasn't angry this time, just uncertain. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I just needed to see you." I nodded. "I'm glad you did." His gaze shifted. "And him? Is he home?" I said. "Probably burning dinner again." That earned a real smile. "He never could cook." "Nope." Ryan looked down, his fingers tightening around his keys. "Listen, I was angry. At both of you, mostly because I didn't understand. I thought you were taking something from me. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. But I get it now, he said softly. You weren't taking anything. You were just finding something I didn't see coming. When I finally found my voice, it came out rough. Ryan, I never meant to hurt you. I know, he said, and maybe I should have been there instead of walking away. You were both just trying to be honest. Something inside me broke loose then. Months of guilt, of silence, of wishing things could go back to before. I took a shaky breath. You should come by. He'd want to see you. Ryan hesitated, then nodded slowly. Maybe tomorrow. He started to walk away, then turned back once more. I'm proud of you, you know, both of you. It takes guts to love someone the world tells you not to. And before I could answer, he was gone. That night, when I told Liam, he didn't say anything for a while. He just reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together. See, he said eventually. Told you he'd come around. I laughed through the tears I didn't even realize were falling. Yeah, guess you did. He smiled and pulled me close. So what now? Now? I said, resting my head against his chest. Now we keep going. The next morning, Ryan showed up just like he said he would. When Liam opened the door, they just stood there. Two people with too much history between them, both unsure where to start. Then Ryan sighed and held out his hand. I'm sorry. Liam didn't take it at first, but then he did, gripping it firmly, like he was holding on to something fragile but worth saving. Ryan glanced at me. You take care of him? Always, Liam said. Good, Ryan said, because if you screw this up, I'll still kick your ass. We all laughed then. Awkward, broken laughter that somehow mended more than any apology could. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't how I imagined reconciliation would look, but it was real. And maybe that was enough. Years later, sometimes when I look back on everything, the heartbreak, the fear, the night spent wondering if we'd made a mistake, I realize it all led us here. To a tiny apartment full of warmth and bad coffee, to quiet mornings and soft kisses, to the understanding that love doesn't have to be loud to matter. Liam still keeps that old photo on our fridge, the one of the three of us before everything changed. Every time I see it, I'm reminded that love isn't about erasing the past. It's about carrying it with you, forgiving what hurt, and choosing each other anyway. Because in the end, it wasn't about being someone's secret. It was about being brave enough to be seen. And I never thought my brother's best friend would feel the same way I did, but I'm grateful every single day that he did. The morning light slips through the curtains, soft and golden, like it knows its way around this place by heart. It's been 5 years. 5 years since that night on the porch, since the shouting and silence, since the fear of losing everything we loved. Now I wake up to the sound of him, Liam, humming quietly in the kitchen. The same old song he always hums when he's cooking. I still can't name it, but I know every note by now. I lie there for a moment, eyes half open, just listening. The rhythm of the city outside, the slow hiss of the coffee machine, the sound of his bare feet padding across the tile. This is what peace sounds like. When I finally get up, he's standing by the stove, wearing one of my old t-shirts that's too small on him, sleeves hugging his arms, hair sticking up in every direction. You're staring, he says without turning around. I'm allowed to, I say. You're mine. He laughs. That easy, soft laugh that still feels like the first day of spring. Coffee's ready. I wrap my arms around him from behind, pressing my cheek against his back. He leans into me without thinking. 5 years, and he still does that, as if his body remembers before his mind does. After breakfast, we drive to the lake. It's become a tradition. Every year on this day, we come back to where it all began. The road hasn't changed much. The trees are taller, maybe. The paint on the old railing is peeling, the sign half faded. We park in the same spot and walk down the same worn path. The wind off the water is cool, sharp with nostalgia. He takes my hand, thumb brushing over my palm, grounding me in the present. Do you ever miss it? I ask quietly. He looks out at the water. What, the way things used to be? Yeah. He smiles faintly. Sometimes. But only the parts that led me here. I nod, knowing exactly what he means. There's no bitterness anymore, only gratitude for the pain that taught us what love could survive. He pulls a folded piece of paper from his jacket and hands it to me. What's this? Open it. Inside is a photo, the three of us again. Me, Liam, and Ryan. But this one's recent. We're standing outside the house we grew up in. Ryan's got his arm around both of us, grinning like old times. Took years, but he came back fully. Dinner visits turned into weekend stays, and somewhere between laughter and late-night talks, the distance disappeared. When I look at that photo, I see forgiveness. Not loud or dramatic, just quiet, steady acceptance. The kind that grows over time, like ivy reclaiming a wall. Liam smiles at me. He sent it last week. Said we should come by soon. Maybe we should, I say softly. He nods. Yeah, maybe it's time. We sit by the lake for hours, talking about everything and nothing. The new neighbors upstairs, the trip we've been planning, how the coffee maker's finally dying after years of loyal service. At some point, he leans his head on my shoulder. You ever think about how close we were to losing this? All the time. He's quiet for a while, then whispers, I wouldn't change a thing. And I believe him, because neither would I. That night, after the drive home, we stopped by a small diner on the edge of town. The kind of place with neon lights and sticky tables, the kind we used to sneak into after midnight when we were kids. Ryan's already there, sitting in the back booth. He looks up when he sees us, that same warm grin spreading across his face. Hey, strangers, he says. Hey, big brother, I answer, sliding into the seat across from him. Liam sits beside me, his hand brushing mine under the table. Just a small, familiar touch. Ryan glances at us, eyes softening. You two look good together. I laugh. We should. We've had practice. He chuckles. Yeah, I guess you have. There's no awkwardness now, no words left unsaid. Just easy conversation, laughter that fills the space like sunlight. When the check comes, Ryan insists on paying. It's a big brother thing, he says. You'll understand when you have to do it. Liam raises an eyebrow. Oh, is that your subtle way of saying we should? Ryan holds up a hand, laughing. Nope, not having that conversation tonight. We all burst out laughing, and for a second, it feels like the world has finally forgiven us. Later, when we get home, the city lights spill across the floor. Liam drops his keys on the counter and turns to me, that same soft look in his eyes, the one that still makes my chest ache in the best way. He steps closer, his hand finding the back of my neck. You okay? I nod. Yeah, just thinking. About how lucky I am, I say. He smiles, brushing his thumb across my jaw. You make your own luck, Ethan. Then he kisses me, slow, certain, like time itself has learned to wait for us. Sometimes I still wake in the middle of the night, heart racing from dreams that feel too much like memories. But then I hear him breathing beside me, steady and real, and I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. He shifts in his sleep, murmuring something soft, reaching out instinctively until his hand finds mine. And I realize, love doesn't need to be loud or dramatic or perfect. It just needs to stay. And ours did. Years later, when people ask how we met, I tell them a simpler version. How he was my brother's best friend, how we used to hang out all the time, how somewhere along the way we just found each other. I don't tell them about the pain or the fear or how close we came to falling apart. Some things don't need retelling. What matters is this: we made it. Not because it was easy, but because we chose to keep trying, to keep believing that what we had was worth fighting for. Because love, the real kind, isn't about fireworks or grand gestures. It's about small moments. Morning coffee, Quiet forgiveness. A hand reaching out in the dark. It's about building a life where the person you love feels like home. And when I look at Liam, his tired smile, the way his laughter fills the room, the way he still looks at me like I'm something he found and never plans to lose, I know I'm already there. Home.